y'all, it's Bren. As I sat down to make this video, I realized I'm wearing the same blue sweater that I was wearing in like my last couple of videos, but whatever. It's a coincidence, it's not the same day. My angle's a little different because the lighting is a little weird in here right now and my hair is like doing crazy things, but that's okay. We're gonna film anyway. I'm gonna do it. I'm finally going to make a video about Ian. I know that a lot of people have been, well, not a lot of people, but a few of you have been asking for this and just wanting to know what happened. The reason that I haven't made a video about him yet is because, or like an entire video, is he and Pete are very different in their thoughts on my like having a YouTube channel. So like Pete could care less what I said about him on the internet. He did not give a rip. His opinion was like, whatever, I don't know those people. Who cares? Do what you want, say what you want, whatever makes you feel better. Ian, totally opposite of that. He's very hesitant about this. And part of the reason that I liked Ian when I met him is that he is like very sensitive. You know me, I like sensitive guys, I like emo guys, and that's Ian. And you know, he has kind of asked me not to get into too much detail if I talk about him on the channel. And he is the kind of person who will overanalyze everything and like stew on it and like read the comments and get really upset and like let it go to his head, and he'll overanalyze everything. And so I want to be able to make a video in a way because, I mean, I don't want there to be this hole in my life that I don't talk about. You know, I like doing this. I like having this channel. It helps me. It's very therapeutic for me. And I want to tell the story. I want you guys to hear the story, and most of it is good. But I know that had I made this video a few months ago when I started back on this channel and he was moving out and all this stuff was going on, I probably would have like been tempted to get very nitpicky and start talking about like the little fights that we had and things that don't really matter, and I wouldn't have been able to have a broader perspective. Whereas I feel like now he's still very much in my life. I see him like 3 times a week. We're still hanging out, but I have more distance from that tumultuous time back last fall to where I think I can maybe give enough context that you'll understand the story without getting into detail and trying to respect his wishes in that way. This story picks up exactly where my video about Pete leaves off. So it's early 2022, and I've just ended my relationship with Pete for the final time. You know, the last time I hung out with him was New Year's Eve going into 2022. And then I didn't speak with him for several months. At this point in my life, I'm really focused on making friends. In 2022, I feel like one of the reasons that I kept getting back together with Pete is that I would be bored and have no one to hang out with or want to do stuff. And so it would have been like 4 or 5 days where I didn't go out or do anything. And then Pete would hit me up and be like, want a beer? And I'd be like, yes, just because like I did want to get out of my house and do something. And so I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. But I need more of a social life. I need to get to know people. Because at that point in time, my sister had just gotten pregnant and was one of those pregnant people who just like didn't want to do anything. She was not interested in doing anything anymore. And my friend Cassie, who, you know, she'll always be my bestie, but she's very, very busy. She's married. She has like 2 jobs. She sings in 3 bands. She's insanely busy. I see her when I can. But, you know, I really didn't have anyone to just like hang with on the regular anymore. So I was still on online dating websites, but not with the intention of meeting someone to be in a relationship with. I even said that on my profile. I was like, I'm just looking to meet people, no pressure. If I make friends, that's great. If it leads to something more, cool, but really just looking to get out and meet people. I was on Bumble BFF. I was trying to meet girls to hang out with, anything. And I did meet a friend, my friend Robin. We met on a dating website, but we like just immediately clicked as friends. He was getting pretty serious with someone else at the time, so we just kind of like got into a friend vibe. And we were out one night in February, it must have been early February, and we had a drink, and then he went home. And I remember being like, man, I got all ready. I did all this just to go out for like one drink, and this takes a lot of time, and I wasn't ready to go home. And I wasn't the kind of person to ever like go out by myself, but I was also trying to, you know, have this new identity and push myself to be social, even though that's not my natural state. So I was like, okay, I'm going to head up to this usual brewery that I would go to all the time with Pete. So there's this brewery in town. They serve a lot of vegan food. I would go there all the time with Pete, so I knew most of like the bartenders and the staff, and I knew who would be working that night, and I was like, okay, I can talk to that person. I'll just go up there, whatever. It was a Wednesday. I go up to the bar, I sit down, usual girl that I know is working, and it really wasn't very crowded in there. There are two other people at the bar that I knew kind of. One was this girl who, and for context, Pete was very antisocial. Pete was, he was like very bad at eye contact, didn't talk to strangers. Just a quiet guy, right? So we didn't really know a lot of the other regulars there or anything. Like, I saw them there, but we didn't like talk to a lot of other people when we would go there together. But there was this girl at the bar who I had talked to a few times. I'm pretty sure I knew her name. She wasn't there a lot, but I definitely like spoken to her before. And then there was this guy at the bar who I had literally, like, I'd seen him there a million times. He was clearly a regular. He knew everybody who worked there. It seemed like he was friends with everybody who worked there, and he was there a lot. And I had met him one time because I literally physically bumped into him at one point, and then he introduced himself to me. And I kind of remember that night he asked, like, he's like, hey, you're here a lot. Who is that you're usually with? Is that your boyfriend? And I remember saying yes, even though at the time Pete, like, really wasn't my boyfriend. But, like, how was I going to explain that? And that was about it. So it was that guy and this girl, and they started talking to the bartender about something that, like, I knew about. So me, having like a tiny bit of liquid courage, I go against my nature wholly because I'm an introverted, awkward person. The kind of person who, like, in preschool, they told my mom that, like, I needed therapy or counseling because I was terrified of talking to the other children. Like, that's my nature, right? I've learned to be more extroverted. I force my extroversion at work for my job because I have to, but it's not my nature. But at this point, I'm like, okay, we're doing it. We're forcing it. And I kind of just joined into the conversation with these two folks. And the guy was Ian, the guy that I had bumped into just one time, who knew everybody there, who I recognized because he was there all the time. And so I kind of chatted with them for a while. I think I ended up talking more to the girl than Ian, but he was sitting between us. And then that was it. And I went home, and I remember getting home and, like, patting myself on the back, like, look at you. You talked to some strangers at the bar, and I don't think you said anything too stupid. Good job, Bren. And that following weekend was actually Valentine's Day weekend, and it was also the Super Bowl. And it was Valentine's Day, so, like, all my friends, Cassie and everybody was with their significant others. Also, some people still weren't going out because it was still kind of COVID-y in 2022, It was like things were open, but some people were choosing not to go out. And Robin was going to see the person that he was dating who lived in Iowa or something for the weekend. I really had no one to hang out with. But this brewery always has these delicious vegan Valentine's Day weekend specials. And I really wanted to try the specials. So I hatched a plan for myself, which was that I was going to go up there by myself and eat them. But I was going to go, like, during the Super Bowl because I didn't think anyone would really be there. I didn't think it would be really crowded because they just have, like, one medium-sized TV. It's not a sports bar. It's not the kind of place you would go to watch the Super Bowl. So I'm like, they probably won't be that crowded during the Super Bowl. That's when I'll go. I didn't want to go up there by myself and eat when the place is, like, packed. That seemed weird, right? So Sunday, I got up there a little bit earlier than when the Super Bowl was on. I sat by myself. I didn't even really know the girl who was bartending that day. It was kind of sad. I was, like, swiping on Bumble at the bar, eating my Valentine's Day food, but it was fine. I was like, this is fine. This is fine. I'm a single gal now. I wanted to go out, and I'm out. I wanted this food, and I'm getting it. Everything is good. And just as I was about to leave, and I had closed out, and I think the Super Bowl had really, like, just started, Ian walked in. And because I had just talked to him that prior Wednesday, I was like, hey, and I waved. I don't know who this girl is, but extroverted me waved him over to sit by me. So he did, and I ended up not leaving. And we ended up kind of watching some of the Super Bowl together and just kind of, like, chatting and talking about music. He also mentioned wanting to go back to school, and, like a total nerd, I gave him my business card because I work in higher ed and I literally help people get into college. That's my job. And I'm such a dork. I'm never off the clock, I guess. Anyway, we watched the halftime show, and the only people in the bar at that point were like me and him, and like down at the other end of the bar, there was this like rowdy group of 5 people who were being really loud, and we like all watched the halftime show, and then that was it. We kind of parted ways. But when I got home, there was a song that I had talked to Ian about that I sent him on Facebook Messenger. Like, here's the link to the song. And that opened up a dialogue on Facebook Messenger between us. At this point, like, I promise you, I 1000% was just trying to make friends. I was not trying to date anyone, and I absolutely was not thinking of Ian as a meet cute. I was not thinking of him as a romantic possibility at all. I knew that he was younger than me. I don't know if I knew exactly how much younger at the time, but he's a solid 5 years younger than me, so he would have been 34 and I was 39 at that point. And I just figured he would think of me as a fat old lady, but I didn't. I was just looking for people that wanted to be bar friends with a fat old lady. Like, I wasn't thinking of him in a romantic way at all. But as the weeks went by, our Facebook Messenger conversation would kind of be like, it would go from like, I think I'm going to head up to the brewery tonight. Okay, yeah, me too, probably. I'll probably see you there. To like, I'm going to go up to the brewery tonight at 5 o'clock. Oh, cool, I'll meet you there. To like, do you want to meet at the brewery at 5:30 tonight? So it kind of progressed from just like, maybe I'll see you there, to like, I'll see you there, to like, do you want to meet up? But still, this whole time, we are just friends, and we are really just going to this one place where we're both regulars and just chatting and talking, and that's it. And sometimes with other people, sometimes just us. Again, he's the kind of person who knows everybody and knew everybody there. So it was always kind of a group hang, right? I'm trying to think what happened next. I was out with Robin one night, and I remember showing him a little bit of the conversation with Ian, and because they were like, what's going on with you and this Ian guy? And I was like, literally nothing. Like, we're just friends, and I have found someone else who likes to go to this brewery like I like to go. And Robin read some of the conversation, was like, nah, he likes you. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way. Why would he like some old lady like me? No way. But Robin did think so. And at one point, the brewery decided that they were going to offer brunch. It was a new thing that they were doing. They'd never had brunch before, but it was like, now we have brunch this Saturday, our first brunch. We're going to have brunch. And Ian and I saw the advertisements for brunch. They're passing out little things, come to our brunch. And we were like, yeah, we should check it out. It wasn't like we were making a brunch date, but it was kind of just like this place that we go all the time where we know everyone. Now they're doing this new thing. Let's go support it. So we meet for brunch one day at the brewery at our usual spot. We have the brunch, and then it's like, 1 p.m. and it's kind of like, oh, what should we do? So I suggested that we go to a second place. So I get in his car, we drive to this other place. We get there, and again, the experience of being with Ian is totally different than the experience of being with Pete, because Ian like immediately makes friends with other people who are sitting at the bar, and again, it's like always a group hang. So we end up talking to these like other 2 guys. It's fun, whatever. On the way back to the first place so that I can get my car, I mentioned that I have to go to the bathroom, and then Ian just pulls into his work. So I came to find out the reason that Ian was there all the time is because he lived 2 minutes from this brewery, and his work was like another 2 minutes. So it was like his work and then the brewery and then his house. Like, they were right in a line. He worked right by there. He lived right by there. So instead of taking me to the brewery where I was going to run in and go to the bathroom, he takes me to his work and is like, you can use the bathroom here. So we go inside, I use the bathroom, and then he's like, let me give you a tour. And I swear it wasn't until that moment that I am walking around his work with him and he is giving me a tour of his work that I actually think like, maybe he does like me. Like, it took that for me to be like, maybe, like, I guess if he's touring me around his job, like, I probably, maybe he does like me. I don't know. And we ended up kind of hanging out the entire day. And by that evening, we were at a place where, like, I wanted a Diet Coke and you had to go get it in like a cooler, and he went and got it for me, and then he went and got us food, and at one point he put his hand on my back just like really quickly. So I was kind of like, okay, I guess this is a thing now. We'd been hanging out for a few weeks, and it seemed like maybe now we were more than friends, but I still wasn't totally sure until the next week when it was like a Thursday, and there was this restaurant that I wanted to go to for this vegan special, and I was like, hey, do you want to do something different tonight? And he was like, okay. So we went to this restaurant, and we were at a place finally where we didn't know everyone else. Like, the only two places that we'd really hung out were these places where we knew people who worked there, and we knew all the other regulars, and we were both regulars, and so everything was always a group hang. But finally we were like at this restaurant where like we didn't know anybody, and it wasn't a group hang. And I remember we both said kind of like, this feels kind of like an actual date, and we sort of laughed about it. And that was the night that he kissed me for the first time in the parking lot after dinner. So then it was like we were dating. And then we just started regularly going places together. That was March 10th. I remember we spent St. Patrick's Day together, and on March 28th, I was hanging out at his house, and he just said to me, I think I'm going to start calling you my girlfriend at work. And I was like, I think you have to like ask me to be your girlfriend or something. And he was like, what? That feels like a high school thing. And I was kind of like, it still applies though, like you still have to have that talk and decide that you're exclusive. So yeah, it kind of was like a month and a half long process. And then we were together. And I think I certainly had not intended on getting into another relationship so quickly after Pete. I really, truly wanted to be single for a while. I was just trying to make friends. I was not seeking this out, but it happened. And I think, I don't want this to come off like it wasn't Ian that I liked, because there were a lot of things about him that I did like. But the biggest thing for me, I think the best thing about it for me was that it felt so freaking normal. And after 7 years of this mess, this toxic mess with Pete, and the past 5 of those being cheated on constantly and gaslit and lied to about another girl, and the breakups and the makeups and the we're just friends, but also he's hitting on me, but then there's another girl, and the back and forth and just everything that I talked about in the Pete video, just that whole mess. It was just so brutal. And then I met Ian, and it was like, oh my God, this is so normal. I had forgotten what it was like to feel like that. In fact, I felt incapable. I remember when Pete and I ended things, I truly, now I will say this, I'm definitely demisexual. Like 100% for sure. And if you want a whole video on that, I'm happy to talk about it. So it's hard enough as it is for me to like online date. I'm not immediately attracted to people. I'm better in a situation where I'm friends with someone first, which is kind of what happened with Ian. And I think that's why it worked out. But at the point where I was at the end of 2021 with Pete, I thought I was asexual. I was pretty sure I would never be attracted to anyone ever again, because I couldn't remember what that was even like. I would like watch a romantic movie and just did not compute. Like, I had forgotten what it was like to want to kiss a person. It was foreign to me. I felt so broken. I really didn't think it was possible for me. Part of the reason that I wasn't interested in trying to date anyone else is I didn't think that I could. I remember there was one date that I went on after Pete, before Ian, where I hung out with this guy, and then he was all over me at the end of the night, and I was just feeling nothing and just being like, this shores it up. I'm definitely asexual now. I should not try to date anyone. Like, I was in such a, Pete destroyed me. And then I met Ian, and it was like, oh my God, this is what it's like to flirt again. I forgot how this felt. And of course, it wouldn't have just happened with anybody. There were specific things that I liked about Ian. Like, I liked that he was friends with everybody and was so social and just like a nice person. I felt like Whereas like with Pete, I would have to like warn my friends, he's extremely introverted. He's not good at eye contact. He's not being rude. He's just shy. You know, like I was proud to bring Ian around all my friends because I knew they would all like him and he's very outgoing. And it seemed like we like to do the same things, even if a lot of those things were like going out and having beers, which is not a lifestyle that I should be gravitating towards, but at the time I was looking for people to get me out of the house and do things. So that was good. At the time it was a positive. So yeah, we were dating, everything was good, and by the summer we were starting to have some problems. And I talked about these problems actually on this channel. So these videos are gone now, but if this sounds familiar, you probably caught them back when I posted them in July 2022 or so. One of the big problems that we had was something that I had been used to with Pete, was that Pete was constantly busy and had no time for me, mostly because of his very demanding parenting schedule and that he was basically a single parent. But also, like, if he did have time to, you know, go out or whatever, grab a beer or whatever, he would contact me. So I really only saw Pete like a couple times a week for a couple hours each. It was always like very limited. He never stayed over. We never had quality time. But you know, here and there, if he was going out, he was inviting me. I was used to that. And Ian was used to going to the brewery after work every day and just talking to the dudes who were also all there, probably avoiding going home to their wives or whatever. But, you know, there was that culture of that, like, goes to the bar, your regular bar, this is your Cheers, whatever, where everybody knows your name and you go there every night after work before you go home, that kind of thing. And so he would be doing that and not inviting me. So it was like, kind of felt like when we first were into each other, anytime he was going out, he wanted me there, but then he stopped wanting me there. And I started noticing that he was going there without me a lot. I'd find out that he had been there. He would just be like, you know, what so-and-so said about so-and-so. And I'd be like, when did you hear that? I wasn't there. Cause I found out he was still going there all the time and not always inviting me. And I had no problem with him going there without me if I were busy, if I had to work late, if I were hanging out with Cassie, if I had something else to do, or maybe he would, you know, I just wouldn't feel like going. Fine, go. I wasn't wanting to go every day with him, but I wanted to be invited, and it felt weird to me that he wanted to go and just like not invite me. And it made me feel like maybe he was embarrassed of me, or he wanted to talk about me, or maybe he just wanted his bros to know that he wasn't like constantly with me, like he wasn't whipped or something. I didn't really know what it was, but all these things were going through my mind. And I try to understand it now because I think for him it was just routine. But when I brought it up, his response was like, well, my ex never cared that I went there, you know, all the time without her. She didn't need to be invited. And I was like, but I remember he said that she was like super busy and had a really demanding job. So she probably just couldn't always go. Or maybe she just didn't want to. But it was the not being invited that was bothering me. Because I was looking for stuff to do. I was bored all the time. I worked from home a lot, especially back then. We were still doing COVID protocol. And when I worked from home, I would want to like go out after work because I'd been home all day already, you know. And he just wanted to go without me. So one night I told him that this bothered me. And he kind of, again, he reacted poorly, didn't understand, why does that bother you? Why can't I go out without you? And it was like, well, it's not like you want to go out with your guy friends and I'm mad that I'm not invited. It's more like you're going to a co-ed group hang and I'm not invited. That's different. I try to explain to him why it's different and why it was upsetting me, and that I didn't always want to go, but I just felt like he didn't want me there. And he got upset, and the very next night he did it again. So then we got in a fight about it. And then the very next night, I knew it was a weekend where he had to pick up his kids. So I didn't figure he'd be going there, but sometimes I knew that he got off work early and went there before he picked up his kids. And they had a new beer coming out that I wanted to try, so I asked Cassie to go with me, and Cassie said she would, so Cassie and I were going to meet up, and I walked in at about 5:30, and the bartender looks right at me and goes, "Oh, you just missed Ian." And I was fuming, steam coming out of my ears. I'm like 3 nights in a row after I told him it bothered me, and now he's doing it anyway. So Cassie got there, and I was like, it's over. Me and Ian, I can't believe he's doing this. Like, and that was kind of it. Like, I don't know that we broke up right there on the spot, but that was the beginning of the big fight that caused our first breakup. And he admitted that he was being a dick by doing that. It was kind of doing it on purpose to spite me. And sometimes Ian can be a little immature like that, honestly. And I know he's going to watch this video, and I know he's going to have something to say about it, but I'm only telling the truth of what happened, you know? And so that was pretty shitty of him, and it led to us breaking up. I don't think we didn't just get in like one big fight and like break up, but like we were both upset. It just felt like it wasn't working. We had to talk about it. We decided, like, I think, you know, there was like, are you happy? No. Well, are you happy? No. Okay. Like, we should part ways. And at the same time that this was happening, it was coming up upon his brother's wedding, which I was so anxious about. So his brother was getting married mid to end of July, and Ian wanted me to go with as his date. But here's the problem. It was an out-of-town wedding, so like 3.5 hours away. It wasn't like it was in town where I could just like go and then go home and freshen up and then like go back to the reception. Like, it, you know, I had to like leave for the weekend with him. His kids were going. I had never met his kids. I had never met his parents. I had never met anyone in his family. I had not met the brother. I had not met anyone. None of these people. And he wants me to go, and he's in the wedding. He's in it. So he's going to be doing all of these wedding party festivities all weekend that I'm not going to be doing. He was basically asking me to go be alone with a bunch of people that I don't know but needed to impress, while he was not with me until like the last 3 hours of the reception, you know? And the fact that I just didn't know anybody, again, didn't know his parents, and I knew that I would be expected to watch his kids. I kept being like, who's going to watch your kids when you're doing all this wedding party stuff? And he'd be like, oh, my parents, blah, blah, blah. But like, they were also, you know, kind of in the wedding party. They're the parents. So I knew I'd probably be like watching the kids, even though I never met the kids. It was just such an anxiety-inducing situation for me. Again, I'm not a natural extrovert, and I had so much anxiety. And also, you know, I had gained a lot of weight during COVID. I had nothing to wear. I had no idea what kind of dress I was going to get. I felt like super self-conscious of how I looked and everything while I was going to be meeting all these new people while I wasn't going to be with him. Had he not been in the wedding and I could have actually spent the time with him, it would have been totally different. Had I already met his family, his kids and stuff, and like was comfortable hanging out with them while he wasn't with me, totally different. But that's not how it was. It was probably the most anxiety-inducing situation that you could have possibly put me in. And so when we broke up, I think that was weighing on me a little bit too. And when we broke up, I was kind of like, well, at least I don't have to go to this wedding out of town. It would have been different too, even if it was the same situation, but it was in town, because I could have felt like I would have like had my car and could have like gone home in between and stuff. But like everything was against me. Out of town, hotel was not where the wedding and reception were. You know, not knowing what to wear, not feeling good about myself, not having met the kids, not having met the parent, nothing. He's in the wedding. I won't be able to be with him the whole time. It was a horrible situation. I really, really was dreading it. And I thought I was probably going to end up having like a panic attack or something if I had to go. So I didn't have to go. But when we broke up, I was very sad. I came on this channel and I made a few videos about it. And there were people in my life who were telling me, and also people on the internet telling me, you know, he was just your Pete rebound. Don't be that upset about it. He was just your Pete rebound. But for me, it didn't feel like that, because I think I just felt like it had not run its course. We had gotten into a fight about a thing that I felt could be fixed. Some people commented that same thing and said, like, it doesn't seem like these are problems that you couldn't overcome, you know. And I felt like that too. I felt like, gosh, did I ruin like a good thing that was going pretty well, you know, for this? Like, we probably could have worked it out, you know. And I was pretty upset. I just felt like it hadn't run its course. There was more that we could have gotten out of this relationship, I guess. And I had wanted to see where it was going, and now it was over. And I was sad, and I was lonely, and I was heartbroken, and all the things that you go through when you go through a breakup. And I made about 3 videos about that on this channel where I was crying my sad little eyes out. And The morning after the wedding, I woke up and I had this long text from him because he had seen the videos. I really didn't think that he would see the videos because he didn't even know about Bren Blogs. Bren Blogs was taken offline for the majority of the time that I knew him and was dating him, but he knew about the candle reviews. And I guess that YouTube has decided if you've ever watched one of my candle reviews, it's going to show you my blogs too, which I don't really love. I know that it's trying to get me exposure, but honestly, I kind of like having this be a separate thing with just my like OG peeps watching it. I don't know that I need like my coworkers that know I review candles, like learning about my dating life, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so apparently the night of the wedding, after the wedding, Ian's on his phone and there's me talking about him. His favorite thing, right? He already doesn't like me talking about him on the internet. And now here I am. The text that I got in the night was like had a little bit of an edge on it. He was not too pleased. But then he texted me later that morning. Like I text him back and then he texted me like, I'm not upset, but I'll talk to you later. I got to drive home. He had to make like the 3-4 hour drive home. That night, I think he got home and probably like took a nap and stuff. And I was all like, oh my God, I was like freaking out. But he called me later that night. We started talking and I said, look, hey, can we just talk in person? I don't know if that was a good idea or not, but I ended up going over to his house. We ended up talking. He mostly was just telling me like what happened at the wedding. We weren't even really talking about us, but we ended up having a pretty okay time. And from then on, we kind of like had opened a dialogue again and we were like talking again. And then we would like hang out a couple times again. And it got to this place where he was like, look, let's just take it slow. But we didn't take it slow. We just kind of like fully got back together. And by August, when it was my 40th birthday, he and Cassie together kind of like threw me a birthday party. He did some really nice stuff for me. We were in a good place right around my birthday. Everything was going pretty well. At the same time, I was helping him get back into school as I had promised. Giving him my business card worked. So we were doing that, and he was really excited and happy about that he was getting back at school, going to finish up his degree. And you know, I was happy. Things were going well. There were some things that concerned me. So I'm going to use a phrase that I know has elder millennial all over it, and Gen Z makes fun of millennials for doing this, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to use the word adult as a verb because it's just the best way I can think to describe it. Ian, though he was only 5 years younger than me, it felt sometimes like he was a lot younger than me. He was not really good at adulting. He didn't really have his shit together too much. No shade. A lot of where he was in life was not his fault, or it was stupid mistakes he made when he was 19 or 20 years old that you really can't listen. My job has me working with people every day who are paying for mistakes that they made when they were 19 or 20 years old. They're my age or older, and they're in debt because of something they did when they were 18 or 19. They're having to retake classes because they screwed up when they were 18 or 19. And people are different when they're in their 30s and 40s than they were when they were 18 or 19. But if you're making mistakes as an 18 or 19-year-old, they will follow you. Whether those mistakes be financial or academic or you know, because you're having kids before you're ready or whatever it is, you're making mistakes when you're young and they will follow you. And my job is to help people work through those things. So I certainly wasn't blaming Ian, but he had made a lot of mistakes in life. And when I say he wasn't good at adulting, this guy, he hadn't been to a doctor or a dentist in like decades. He wasn't taking care of himself. He wasn't happy in his job or his career and wanted to change it, but I think felt very stuck. But just kind of also a general, little bit of a sense of irresponsibility going on. There were just little things. Again, I said I wasn't going to nitpick, but like he needed to return his internet router to the cable company. He just never did, and then got like a $300 fine. He had lost his tollway I-Pass that goes in his car. If you live in Illinois, you know everybody has these little passes in your car that allow you to drive on the tollway. He lost his, so instead of getting a new one, he just didn't drive on the interstate, which took him twice as long to get everywhere. But at the end of September, his lease was coming up, and his landlord was jacking his rent again. And I know already that, he's got 2 kids. He pays, and again, past mistakes that follow you forever. When he split up with his ex, he didn't get a lawyer. She did. She took him to the frickin' cleaners. I thought Pete's custody battle and Pete's situation with Pete's baby mama was bad. Anyway, Ian had a lot of expenses. We'll just put it that way. And where I was in my mind at that point in time, in the fall of 2022, was like, well, this is going pretty well with Ian. We were in love, but his life is a little bit of a mess. But I can help him. I'll let him move in with me for super cheap so that he can pay off some of his debts and get it together. So stupid. It doesn't work like that. But that's what I thought back then. I thought I could help him fix himself. But that was extremely naive of me. And what ended up happening is, and I will say this, that was not the only reason that I wanted to move in with him. I hadn't lived with a guy since I was married. I sort of lived with Adam, considering that I technically lived with my parents when I was dating Adam, but I stayed at Adam's all the time. But I did not have anything in his home. I did not decorate it. I did not keep stuff there. I might have had some shampoo in his shower and a couple things on a nightstand, but I did not live there. It was different. So I really hadn't lived with someone, since I was married. And so it felt let's see how this goes. It'll be kind of fun to play house. And I think that you get to a point in a relationship where you're always staying at each other's places all the time anyway. And so you're kind of just why don't we just live together? But then when he moved in, some of it was kind of fun, figuring out where we're going to put stuff. But this place is not big enough. It is 2-bedroom, and it has this, whole big rec room in the basement, which is where his living room just kind of plopped down. But there just wasn't enough space. The kitchen especially is so small. And every cabinet was bursting with stuff. All of a sudden, there's all this other stuff in my house. And also there's children. Now there are kids that live here part of the time. And I'm not used to that at all. And I like his kids. I like Ian's kids a lot. I like hanging out with them and spending time with them. When we go do things together, we go out to eat or we go bowling or we do an activity. But I wasn't used to just kids just always being around or Ian being all around all the time for that matter. I'm someone who has gotten very used to being alone, and I really enjoy my alone time, and I really enjoy, right now, I can just sit down and do this blog because there's no one else here and the dogs are sleeping. And it was just a lot to get used to, but also there was just stuff everywhere, so much stuff. And it just felt very closed in. But I think the biggest thing was that I felt like all of a sudden I became Ian's mother. Even though we just had different ways of treating money, and I felt like here I am trying to help him by charging him very little to live here, but I don't see him making any improvements in his situation, that kind of thing. Feeling noticing him, I got to the point where I'd have to be are you doing your homework? Because he wasn't and then he gets on me what do you care? It doesn't affect you. And it's but if you and I are going to be together, then it affects me. There were a lot of things like me being you need to make a dentist appointment. You haven't been to the dentist forever. And him being why do you care? And me being if you have to figure out why I care if you go to the dentist, think about it for a minute. But also just in general, I just felt I had to be his mom. I ended up making him a doctor's appointment because he hadn't been to a doctor again in forever. And he had some problems that I was concerned about. So I make him a doctor's appointment. I get him to the doctor. If he was, trust me, Pete made Ian look like Danny Tanner. he was worlds cleaner than Pete was, for sure. I mean, it would be hard not to be, really. And he would pick up after himself, and he would like do the dishes. But Ian was never vacuuming. Ian was never like washing our sheets or our bedding. He was not cleaning toilets or showers or anything like that. Like, and it didn't feel to me like I was doing that much more housework than I was before he was there, but I should have been doing less because now there was another person there and we both work the same amount, right? You know, and just little things that start to get at you. But I also felt like part of what I value about being in a relationship is that you get to like bounce ideas off of someone else. And one thing where, you know, again, I knew that when I made this video, there were going to be a lot of comparisons to Pete, and I didn't want it to seem like I'm not over Pete because I'm still talking about him. Trust me, right now in 2024, I'm over Pete. But at the time in 2022, it was hard for me not to compare because I had just been in a 7-year relationship with someone and now I was dating someone else. Like, it's human nature to compare. And like something about Pete that I appreciated was that like if I had a problem, I could bounce it off him and he would thoughtfully give me a response. And something that I was finding with Ian was that like I would ask him advice for like, I have this weird stain on the carpet and I've already tried this, this, and this. What else do you think I should do? And he would just be like, I don't know, buy a new carpet. Like it didn't seem like he really wanted to like thoughtfully give me a response or help me out. Probably the biggest thing was that the washing machine broke and I needed to get a new washing machine. And I like asked him what type of washing machine. He had no opinion. I went to the store by myself and I picked out a washing machine and then I showed it to him and he had no opinion. And then one day I was like, okay, I think I'm going to buy this washing machine, and like had it in my cart online. And I asked him a couple questions and he had no opinion. And then I watched a couple YouTube videos about the washing machine and I told him what they said and he had no opinion. And then, so I feel like one of the benefits of dating a straight man is usually that they have opinions about household like appliances and stuff. Like I feel like with Pete, I could have been like, the washing machine's broke, and Pete would have been like online, like researching what washing machine we should get, and he would have picked one out and I would have trusted that and gone with it. But I felt like I was still living like a single person. I was still doing all of the stuff that I would have to do if I were single. I was not really like reaping any benefit from having Ian around. I ended up still having to pick out the washing machine. I asked him if he could install it. He said no, so I paid for installation. I was here when the guys came and installed it. I did all of the things that I would have had to do if Ian didn't exist. You know what I mean? And what pissed me off the most was that I was like, okay, he was right next to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to hit purchase on this washing machine with the installation is coming on this date. And he's like, okay. And I hit purchase. I'm like, okay, it's done. And he goes, is it high efficiency? And I wanted to slap that fucker in the face because I've been picking out this washing machine for 3 weeks. I've asked you about it 47 times and you had no goddamn opinion. And now as soon as I purchase it, now you have a question? And in general, I think if you were just going to explain it in one sentence, which is probably what I should have done, I felt like I was putting a lot into this relationship. I was cleaning. I was helping take care of these kids. I was helping him through school. I was helping him with his job, and he changed jobs, and I helped him with that. I was helping him with his health and making his appointments and reminding him to do things that he needed to do, like return internet routers and get an iPass and all this stuff, which he still has never done. I was taking care of him like a parent takes care of a kid. And the only thing that I was getting in return when I really sat down and thought about it, and I did really sit down and think about it, was companionship. He was around. He was someone to talk to. He was there. He was someone to cook for, which I like. Someone to, rehash the day with. He was around. It was companionship. I was giving all of these things, helping him even with his money and giving him a good deal on being here while I'm doing all of this stuff for his health and his education and his career. And I was just getting nothing. I couldn't even get him to help me pick out a washing machine. There was one point in the relationship where we went up to Madison to hang out and I got a flat tire on the way up there. And I pulled over to the side of the road. That was the other thing that really bothered me, though, I will say. I had to drive us everywhere, too. I had to drive us everywhere. Not just because he didn't have an iPass, but because his car was falling apart. So I had to drive us everywhere. And it's just like, sometimes I like driving. And I know I sit here and I claim, and I am. I'm about as independent of woman as you can get. I'm progressive. I'm a feminist. I can do everything myself. But sometimes you just don't want to. Sometimes it's nice to have someone else drive, you know. So I'm driving us, I get a flat tire, and I pull over, and I'm like, oh boy, I don't even know who to call. I get out my phone, I'm like, shit. And he hops out of the car, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to change your tire. I had no idea he knew how to change a tire. He did. He changed my tire. And then we went, and I was like, okay, do we have to turn around? Like, now I'm on the spare. He's like, no, let's just go to this place right here and get a new tire. We get a new tire. We're able to proceed to Madison and have a good night. And I will tell you what, we had a great night that night. And it's because he did something for me that I couldn't do myself. And it was this little moment of like, yes, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship. I help you out, you help me out. And it was really great. We had a great, like, the next week of our relationship was really good because I was like really thankful that he changed my tire, but that only goes so far, you know, and then it just goes back to like the same old. But like, honestly, that's like the one example that I could think of. Now, more recently, he put together a desk for me, but that was recent. Hey, it's future Bren here in the same sweater, but a different color. I have to cut in here and cut myself off. I do hate when YouTubers do this because I find it a bit jarring, but I was editing back this video and I feel like at this point I sort of start rambling and repeating myself and I'm not really able to articulate what I was trying to say. So I want to kind of film the end of the video again. I filmed that a couple weeks ago. I think what I was trying to say right here at this point was that I felt like I didn't really have a teammate, a partner. You know, I was taking care of someone and they were living in my house and they were a companion, but I didn't really feel like I had a full teammate or a partner, someone to like tackle life with. I still felt like I was tackling life alone. There was just another person here and the space thing wasn't great. And we just started getting on each other's nerves. And it was probably September or maybe even earlier than that. Maybe it was like the summer when we got into a fight one night. And I think I blurted out like, you're going to have to move out. And instead of fighting that, he kind of was like, I know, I've already been looking. And it sort of gave me a little relief because I felt like, you know, if this doesn't work out, how am I going to ask him to move out? That's going to be really difficult. So the fact that we were on the same page was great. It came up a few more times before we did anything about it. And I think it came up in another fight. And then finally we got to a point where we talked about it like when we weren't fighting, during the day, when things were calm. And he said that he would look for a place. It was awkward and it was very weird because we did not say or specify whether or not that meant that our relationship was over. And I kind of wasn't sure if like we just weren't saying that because it was going to take some time for him to find a place. So we were still going to have to live together. So, you know, let's just leave all that difficult conversation for later because this is already awkward enough. Luckily, he did find a place pretty quick. But he had a whole month where he had the new place and knew he was moving into it, but was still here. And that was October of 2023, which was like the hardest month of my life. If you all recall, that was also the month that I found out my dad had cancer. So I was going through all of that. And in the 1 week, my dad was in the hospital. It was the week that Ian was actually like officially like he had movers to come get his big stuff and was like really transitioning out of here. And then I got the flu all at the same time in the same week. It was a terrible week, maybe one of the worst of my life. And he moved all his stuff out after this weird month of awkwardness. If you've ever been in a situation where you're still living with someone, but they're, you know, the relationship has ended and you're waiting till you can logistically move away from each other, you know how weird it can be. But we were okay about it. You know, we were adults and it could have been worse. he moved out, and I don't know, we still just like kept hanging out quite a bit. He wanted me to like help him get his new place together, and we still like met up for dinner. He still played trivia on my trivia team with my parents, which he wanted to make sure that he could still do and still does now. And then there would be a few times where it would kind of come up like, what are we doing here? Are we dating? I don't know. And we just kind of ignored it. We were just like, it doesn't matter. As long as like we're both cool with what we're doing here, there's no reason we need to label things or address, what is this or anything like that. That can be very concerning. If you've watched my channel, I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble in the past by being in these situationships where things are not cut and dry and things are not labeled, and people seem to always get hurt that way. But where I was coming from right now was, well, I'm not looking to date anyone else. I'm not trying to do any online dating or anything like that. Might as well keep hanging out with Ian as long as it makes me happy to do so. I did feel a little bad at times because I felt like I was pretty happy with the fact that we were living separately again. It had just been a lot for me. The situation just didn't fit. And I was kind of happy to have my alone time and my space back. And I felt guilty because I don't know that he felt the same way. But I don't know. Now looking back at it, I have to say, it kind of feels like since that point, our relationship has just kind of gone in reverse. Almost like it's been a conscious uncoupling, whatever Gwyneth Paltrow said that she did, right? It's kind of almost like just this slow breakup, this one step back, another step back, another step back. And I haven't necessarily hated that. It hasn't been a bad experience, really. But it does kind of feel like that's what's happening. One thing that was better for me after he moved out was that I didn't feel like his problems were my problems as much anymore. Like I could just be there for him and help him with his problems like I would help any of my friends who were facing obstacles in life without feeling like I had to like shoulder them and really like they were my problems, I really just thought in the future, like looking forward at my future, I just have to worry about me. I don't have to worry about anybody else's mistakes that they've made. I only have to worry about the mistakes I've made. I don't have to worry about anybody else's finances, just mine, and making sure I've got things in order for the things that I want to do in life as a single person. And just, I could listen to Ian's problems and try to help him more from the perspective of like, I'm your friend, I'm going to try to help you, and less of like, oh my gosh, now these are my problems too, and almost feeling like I had to take them on completely. And so there was like some pressure off of the relationship or whatever you would call it at this point in time. So things kind of for a while were like lighter and more fun, playing trivia, hanging out. It was almost like we were back just like dating again when things are lighter and more fun. But another step back, another step back. Lately, I do feel like we're starting to get on each other's nerves again. We've been kind of bickering a little bit more. When I first met Ian, he and I didn't really agree too much on like politics, worldviews, perspectives on life. When I say politics, I'm not necessarily just talking about like Republican, Democrat. Like I'm just talking about, I don't know, perspectives. But some of that being political. We didn't really totally agree, but he seemed like a very open-minded person, which I appreciated. He said some things when we first were hanging out that I was kind of be like, I don't know, but I really tried to see things from where he was coming from. And also he seemed really interested in what I had to say. He seemed to be the kind of person who maybe had only had like one or two perspectives on life, but was really interested in absorbing other people's perspectives. And so I liked that. I liked this open-minded quality that he had. And I do feel like over the course of our relationship, I sort of brought him over to my side a little bit more. He was in more agreement with me on certain things just about the world, worldview, politics, etc. And since he's moved out, I feel like he has gone back to the dark side. He has gotten way more, he's gone back to like these bro-y podcasts, which just like, honestly, one of my biggest icks in life is like dudes who listen to Joe Rogan. Like, I just cannot. It's right up there with dudes who call themselves libertarians. I can't. You know, and when I met him, I knew that he did like listen to a lot of that stuff, and that was kind of his world. He was really into like podcasts by like military dudes and stuff, and there's that whole world of broadcasts. And I could tell that was something that he gravitated towards because he was trying to kind of like find his place in the world and find people that he could identify with. He has a little bit of like an emo, lonely boy kind of personality. And I think he was just trying to find community, and some of those like podcasts and whatnot, like it really helped him through his last breakup before me. So I didn't necessarily like judge him for it, but I was just, some of it was kind of like, you know, this is the stuff you're listening to. Like I didn't always agree with all of it. But again, we kind of moved past that. But now that we're apart again, he has gone back to that kind of thing. And I can tell in the conversations that we're having when we're talking, I can just tell that he's listening to that a lot more, and he's in that world a lot more, and he's having a lot more of those perspectives, and he's no longer as much on my side. And so we're sort of just bickering about things. You know, the other night we were out and he was in his phone the whole night. So I'm like, what can I talk to him about? And so I'm like, just trying to make conversation. I'm like, you know, I heard on the news the other day that they did a study that said like overweight women make less money at work than thin women for the same position. But with men, it's the same. It doesn't matter what your weight is. You make the same amount of money. And his response was just to be like, I'm so sick of hearing about this like anti-men stuff. And I'm like, what? That's not what I was saying at all. It's not anti-men. It's a statistic. It's not an opinion. And I just, I'm like, this isn't about you right now. And I feel like with the type of men that I usually choose to have in my life, people like Pete, my friend Brendan, my friend Robin, they're very much like kind of feminist, progressive allies to women. They know that they're privileged because they're men. They recognize that, and have no problem admitting that, but, you know, using it for good, not evil. But I feel like with Ian, he's very defensive and he takes everything personally. So when I bring up something like that, his immediate reaction is to be like, you know, well, men have it hard too. And it's like, no, I wasn't trying to go there. But I don't love that part of him, that side of him. And that was something I think he hid from me, but also I feel like got away from when we were together. And now he's kind of back in that world. And I will say this, every time that Ian and I talk, it feels contentious now. Whether it's about anything, even at trivia with my parents and someone gets an answer wrong, we're kind of like snapping at each other. And we're fighting about politics and everything else. And I think maybe we just need a break from each other. I don't know. You know, I did go out with Pete the other night. And what was really nice about it, and the reason that I still do go out with Pete like once every 3 months at the most, like it's not a frequent activity. But when I do see Pete, it's just really nice to have a conversation with someone about what's going on in the world and they like agree with me. It's not to say that I don't want to hang out with people who don't have the same opinion as me. But I get that all the time. You know, whenever I talk to my parents about politics and what's going on in the world, it's contentious and we have different opinions. I don't even talk to my sister's baby daddy, and I rarely see my sister or my nephew because of it, because he is racist and homophobic and we have just gotten into it too many times. And at work, things are depressing. And in the news, things are depressing. And sometimes I just want to have a conversation with a friend who we're on the same side. And it's nice to go out with Pete and we talk about what's happening in the world. We talk about how messed up it is. And then he tells me something he heard, and I tell him something I heard, and we go, oh my gosh, yes. And then we laugh together and make fun of, stuff. But also in the end, we're like, frustrated together, but he sees the world the way that I do. That's why I kept Pete around for as long as I did, because we absolutely didn't get along on a lot of other things, but we had great conversation and I felt like we were like coming from the same viewpoint. And it's just, I don't have that with anyone else. I don't have that with Ian or my family. My friend Cassie, I love her to death and she's a great person. I think we mostly agree on things, but we just don't really talk politics. It's not like our thing. And I am fine with that because you need that kind of friend too. I wish I could find that particular trait in Pete, just someone who like we see the world the same way like that, and like find it in someone else who's a better match overall. If I could take a little bit of Pete and a little bit of Ian, a little bit this from this ex and this from this ex, I could find the perfect guy. I just can't find it in the same person. I mean, one of the stories that when I was editing the video, I was like, oh, I should have told that story. I was talking about how like Ian was a pretty clean guy compared to Pete, and I talked a lot in the Pete video about how Pete and I just did not have the same like ideas about parenting at all. I remember there was a time that I went over to Pete's house and it was when I was considering moving in with him for the second time. So I was trying to like assess the situation I would be getting myself into. And I noticed that there were handprints all over his walls and especially all over his door frames. I mean, just dirty handprints all over the door frames, as if someone with dirty hands were just constantly like putting their hand, you ever go into a room and rest your hands on the door frame? And it was just really bad. And I had to ask, like, was this like from one instance or is this just the way it is? I don't remember how I asked it. I remember I knew he was going to be mad and I tried to be delicate about it. And Pete's response was the same as it always was, where he just looked at me and goes, that's what it's like to have kids. Everything was like, it has to be like this. This is what it is. I don't have kids, so I don't know. But when you have kids, you have to have dirty door frames. That's what it's like to have kids. And I just would always think to myself, like, but I know other people with kids who don't live like this. I was a child once and I didn't live like this and I wasn't allowed to put my dirty hands on the walls, just kind of that thing. Fast forward a couple of years, Ian's here in my house right over here and he's in the kitchen and one of his kids comes through and puts their hands on the walls and Ian just goes, get your hands off the walls. And that's it. Didn't affect the kid at all. Kid was talking. Kid just took the hands down, kept talking. But I was sitting over here on the couch and I was just like, did he just tell his kid to take his hands off the walls? Like, yeah, see, look, that kid's not going to be in therapy in 40 years talking about, I can't believe my dad didn't let me put my hands on the walls. And I remember I told Pete about that. And I remember Pete just kind of gave me a reaction like, well, I guess you found someone who's a better match for you. But you know what I mean? Like there's things about all of my exes that I wish that I could, take. I can't find one person with all the traits that I want. It was funny because Ian the other day asked me, like, is there anything that you miss about your ex-husband? Or I don't know what the exact question was, but it was basically like, what was, was there anything that you like miss about your ex-husband or wish you could like find again? And my answer, I had to think about it. And I was like, you know what? It's that he was good with money and I felt like I could trust him with money. I don't think at this point in my life I would ever like trust anybody with my money or finances or any major decision ever again. But my ex-husband was like, he was a finance major and he worked in finance. So like, if you wanted to know what to do with your money, he was on it. He was just like responsible and like, I could leave like the bills to him. I could like trust that he was going to do our taxes right. And I didn't have to like check it myself. I just trusted him. I would so never ever do that again. But that was his thing. I guess there's something about everyone is my point. Anyway, I'm digressing now in the video that I was making because I was digressing too much in the other version. Where are Ian and I now? Honestly, in the video that I filmed a couple weeks ago with the blue sweater, I was talking a lot about how I didn't really know where we were and how to label it. But honestly, lately, I feel like we are just friends. We're friends that like talk every day, at least a little. There may have been a couple days where we haven't even texted. We mostly send 1 or 2 texts a day though. We still hang out 2 or 3 times a week, but we're just friends. There's nothing physical between us anymore, and that's not my choice. That's his. But that's fine. You know, but like we don't kiss, we don't there's no, he doesn't put his arm around me. We're just friends. And the other night we got in kind of a little argument. Actually, it was the night of the conversation about the women at work or whatever. And he had my garage remote in his car and I took it back because I was angry. And he hasn't asked for it back. Because I think we both can kind of feel that we're gravitating apart and that maybe we're just better like, I don't know. I would like to say that I will always keep him as a friend, but it feels like we're definitely like going our separate ways at this point. And it probably is best that we're just friends. I don't know that we really click and get along enough to have a relationship. I don't think he gives me the full like partnership and teammate vibe that I'm looking for. And I would like to find a partner that sees the world a little bit more like I do and shares more of my like politics and opinions on things. Not to say that they have to be a perfect match and exactly see everything the way that I do, but I want to feel like I've got someone to like tackle this world with if I'm going to be with someone. If that makes sense. But I appreciate a lot of stuff that Ian has done for me. I want to end this on a positive note because I certainly am glad that I met him and I wouldn't take it back at all. And not just because he was a rebound from Pete and got me over Pete or anything like that. I think I've learned a lot from him. I think he is a good person with good intentions. And, you know, it's been a learning experience like every relationship is. And if he sees this video, he's probably not going to be thrilled about it. I don't know. We'll see, I guess. Stay tuned for the fallout. All right, y'all. I'm going to stop it there. Thanks for watching. You're pretty much caught up on that situation now, so I can check this video off the list. But I've got more, so stay tuned. Talk to you later. Bye.